Hey there, comic book fans! I'm John Andersen, and I just rewatched Daredevil Season 2, episodes 5 through 8. And to be honest, the first two episodes are a little slow, but the second two really get the plot going for the rest of the season. So if you haven't seen these episodes yet, keep in mind I'm going to be going through key plot points from the episodes. So here is your spoiler warning. And there it goes. Now, as the last episode confirmed, we get the introduction of Elektra Nachios, who is back in New York to take down the Yakuza. And obviously, Elektra needs Matt's help, but he's a little reluctant because he thought he took care of the Yakuza. But she informs him that they're within the Roxxon Corporation, which is a corporation that is notorious for an evil organization within the comics of the Marvel Universe. And we've also seen them in seasons of Agent Carter. Now, throughout this episode, we get a lot of backstory between Matt and Elektra, where they first met at this party, and how Matt tells her things about himself, and they have a really dramatic sex scene in the old gym that Matt used to work at. And we see why Matt and Elektra aren't together anymore, because she brings him to Roscoe Sweeney's mansion, who is the man that killed his dad, and Elektra wants Matt to have his revenge and kill him. But obviously, having Matt's code, he's not going to do that. And that creates the real breaking point for their relationship. So Matt decides he's going to go on this crusade with Elektra, but they're going to do it his way, which means no killing. Now, before getting fully involved in Elektra's plans, he actually manages to have a date with Karen that starts out really bad because obviously he's flustered with all the stuff that's been going on. But as the night goes on, it turns out really well for them, and it seems that their relationship is going in a good direction. And we also get a cameo from Marcy, who is Baki's ex-girlfriend from last season, and he's looking for legal advice from her in order to take down D.A. Reyes. And she name drops Jessica Jones because that's a client that they're dealing with in their legal department. So that's the second time this season that we get a nod to Jessica Jones. So Nelson and Murdoch discover that D.A. Reyes wants to go after Frank and get him the death penalty, and obviously given one half of Nelson and Murdoch's perspective on the death penalty, they decide that they want to defend him. So at first it seems that all they want to do is lower his sentence so that way he doesn't get the death penalty and is simply incarcerated, which seems like a very in and out thing because all Frank has to do is say that he's guilty. And with that knowledge, Matt decides to go on an adventure with Elektra to a gala, very reminiscent of the time that they met, to gather some intel from Roxxon. Now, as you can imagine, it's really hard working with Frank Castle, but since Karen's so invested in his case and figuring out what happened with his family, she's able to break through to Frank with a picture that she has of his family, and they're able to make some headway. Now, back at the gala, Elektra and Matt are barely able to escape, but they gather the intel that they needed, and we learn from the CEO of Roxxon that this goes a little deeper than just the Yakuza, because he claims he doesn't even work for the Yakuza, hinting at the Hand, which I'll get into a little later. Now, it's assumed that Frank's going to plead not guilty, but after talking to Karen and digging into his case, he kind of wants to fight Reyes just as hard as Karen does and pleads guilty and leads to the court case of the people versus Frank Castle. Now, as the court case is being prepared, we see them trying to formulate a jury, and it seems that the people are 50-50 on the idea of the Punisher. Some people think he's a hero, other people think he's a killer. Now, as Matt should be preparing his opening statement, because this is the biggest court case of their careers, he gets a call from Elektra, and she obviously has another mission for him. So Elektra needs the intel translated, so they interrogate a translator that works for the Yakuza, and they discover that they're moving dirt out of the city for some odd reason. And during this investigation, they encounter the Yakuza, which leads to Elektra getting cut by one of the members, and Matt finds the need to tend to her wounds, furthering his compassion for the court case, resulting in him being late and completely missing his ultimate statement, forcing Foggy to do it on a whim, unprepared, and he manages to do a good job, but has a very rocky start. Obviously, this creates some tension between Nelson and Murdoch, and Karen has to catch up Matt on the case because he's been missing it so much. So they have a little half date where they go over the case but get Thai food as well. Now, in their preparation, Karen and Matt kind of clash on ideologies, where Karen kind of sides with the Punisher that what he's doing is a necessary evil, and Matt really feels that the law will provide justice at all costs. And that creates a lot of tension between the two, making their relationship kind of walk on eggshells. So the next day in court, we meet the medical examiner that worked on the case when Frank's family was murdered, and all they need him to do is admit that he tampered with the files, so that way they can get the case postponed because Reyes is heavily involved in that manner. So he exposes himself, but at the hands that he was threatened by, we find out, Elektra, and that causes the whole argument to go mute. And that leads to probably my favorite scene out of these 4 episodes, where Matt kind of comes clean to Foggy and they have a big debate in the bathroom. And Matt exposes that he's been working with Elektra, he's that private partner that they've been working with, and Foggy's just kind of disgusted because he's been lying to his friends and he feels that being Daredevil is more important than the biggest case of Nelson Murdoch's career. Now, obviously, Matt's super pissed at Elektra because she took it upon herself to get involved in his legal practice, but instead of taking his frustration out on her, he takes it out on the Yakuza. Now, we see the reason that the Yakuza is moving dirt is because they're digging this big hole, and it's kind of ambiguous at this point to what are the Yakuza doing. Now we get the introduction of the ninjas of the hand, and they're able to hide their heartbeat, and Matt can't really sense them, which I really like because that's a great challenge for Daredevil because he's so reliant on their movements to take down criminals. Now, as you can imagine, Daredevil and Elektra are outmatched by these ninjas, and Elektra is poisoned. But when all seems lost, Stick comes out of nowhere and saves them. Now, Stick was a character we met last season who trained Matt and made him kind of who he is today. Now, since Matt's so concerned about Elektra recovering, he misses another day in court where they bring Colonel Ray Schmanever to the stand, who is really the only person that's able to advocate for Frank and the good things that he did at war. Now, during this time, Stick finally updates Matt to what's actually going on, and it's this war between the Hand and the Chase. Now, the Hand are these criminals that have evolved over time and apparently have discovered the secret to immortality, and the Chase, led by Stick, have been trying to battle them at whatever cost, and it seems that they're back in the city because they want to activate this weapon called the Black Sky, which Stick doesn't know really what it is because it's never been done before. And he explains that Elektra's been working for the Chase this whole time, and them meeting wasn't a coincidence, it was actually a mission for her to recruit him back to the Chase. Now, Karen shows up at Matt's apartment and discovers Elektra in his bed, and that's the final nail in the coffin for their relationship. And the only reason she came there is because she wanted to update him because Frank is going to testify on the stand, and Foggy wants Matt to take that testimony. Now, the next day in court, Matt actually shows up, but Frank has a breakdown and pleads guilty and swears that he'll do everything all over again and he'll kill anybody who gets in his way, ultimately causing them to lose the case. Now, when he gets back to his apartment, he talks to Elektra because obviously he wants to figure out what really went on, and she confesses to him that yes, it was all part of the plan, but I fell in love with you and I want to be with you and fight this war your way. And during this time, a ninja of the Hand infiltrates Matt's apartment and they get into a scuffle, and he finds out that this member of the Hand is just a kid, and we see Elektra literally just slit his throat, and that's obviously going to create some conflict between these two that have just created a partnership. And finally, we get a great reveal of Wilson Fisk, the main villain from last season, and clearly he was the reason for the breakdown of Frank Castle on the stand, and they have some sort of deal that they want to work out. So that's my thoughts on episodes 5 through 8. If you guys like this video, be sure to share and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook at John Ryan Andersen, or on Instagram and Twitter at The Comic Look. Remember guys, as always, comics do deserve a second look.